Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you missed it on the 6th of May, the Save Wild had a presentation on drones and the use thereof for alien vegetation management, both for planning how to quantify and find out where alien vegetation is, so in order to map it, and then also how to potentially use drones to remove alien vegetation. This is a kind of a force multiplier idea. So my name is Sean Hill, and I've been using drone technology since 2019. Prior to that, I was in Australia working on farms, and prior to that, my career was primarily in conservation. Well, was only in conservation. Where I worked for Virginia Tech in the USA, doing disease ecology up in Botswana. Also ran various game reserves around South Africa, also involved with wildlife rehabilitation. But in 2016, I bought my first drone in Australia just to take some photographs and pretty videos of my holidays. It was only in 2019 that I fully discovered the actual power of drone technology. And ever since, I've been looking at ways to apply this in the conservation field and where best they can get used. So it's a combination of things. It's not just the drones themselves, but it's the software that comes behind them that is used to pull apart information or quantify information. And these days we have the amazing ability to use open source software, very, very powerful software from the open source world that can give us a huge amount of insights into what's going on in our environment. So images like this are all too fresh in our memories from the fires in Knysna in 2017 and then also the George fires in 2018. They were quite devastating, and since then we've had even more alien vegetation come up. The reason these fires were so intense was because of the alien vegetation that was just building up and up and up over years and was never really controlled properly. And their seeds have now gone absolutely bananas. So we have a lot more alien vegetation that's come up throughout the Garden Route and Western Cape areas. And this is not only a massive problem for the human population, but it's also has an extremely negative impact, obviously, on the biodiversity of our very sensitive fynbos areas. So alien vegetation such as black wattle, pines, blackwood, things like that, blue gums, they burn extremely hot. So that obviously makes the fires more intense and then leads to massive destruction of housing and property, but then also our biodiversity. So in the Knysna fires, about 20,000 hectares were destroyed and 1,000 homes were lost. And it also led to a lot of biodiversity loss. The George fires in 2018 were much larger and they destroyed a lot more land, and the biodiversity loss was unreal. It's the worst ever recorded in history. Also, 8 people died in the George fires. And these were amplified by the alien vegetation. So it starts off very small. So we've got little cedar pockets of aliens like this, the black wattle flowering in yellow, and then the pine trees coming up there. And they just slowly dump their seed banks, and then eventually you start getting massive encroachment into the natural environment, which makes it very difficult to control after a while because it's just so thick. So one way to potentially manage or to have a look at what's really going on is to get a real scope of what's happening in our ecosystems is using drone technology. Being able to map alien vegetation is going to help provide very, very good management foundations. So we can start planning what areas are going to be easier to get into, where the worst affected areas, where the areas that are closer to houses, etc., etc. So So a drone is a robot. It's very easy to program. So the drone can be told to go up to a certain altitude and then take a number of photographs in a lawnmower pattern like this, for example. And that's essentially scanning the ground. Those images have a very high level of overlap, and in specialized software called photogrammetry software, we can stitch those images into three-dimensional models, so exact replicas of the real world. So say there's a lot of layering that can come from that. We can get things like digital surface models, 3D models, high-resolution flat maps, and all of that information can be interpreted by using GIS software. So this is what the workflow would look like. You would have a drone flight to capture the data. The data would then be processed in the computer, and then taken that information and those maps and models can then be analyzed using GIS software, and that information can then be applied into the field. So with regard to the high resolution images, you can see the overlap is very dense. So what it's doing is it's taking an image which is then applying different angles to the points of overlap. That allows us to build the 3D models. So what's the point in using a drone? Well, it's a very good way to, as I said, to quantify the world. So it allows for a very rapid and informed decision-making process. It improves on the current methodology that we have. Ground surveying is a very tedious process, and you're not going to see as much as you can from the air. And the idea is to formulate a best practice approach, which will then speed up the management planning process and the implementation of those management plans. And we also keep a digital record of the landscapes that will increase the analytical accuracy and minimize the cost when it comes to surveying large areas for alien vegetation. The maps are up to date. Satellite information can be very out of date. The pixels are very large with a satellite, whereas with a drone they're very small, so the resolution is very fine. You get three-dimensional data out of drone imagery, and a lot of the areas that we have recorded in terms of aerial data, such as satellites or aircraft, are often out of date, so it doesn't actually bear any resemblance to what those places or areas would look like now. And also with the drone, because it's a robot, you can watch, rinse, repeat, and do the same flight repeatedly every single time, and therefore your data is always going to be very consistent. So if we have a look at a scale model, so here we have a drone pixel of 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters, and here we have a satellite pixel of 1 meter by 1 meter. That is to scale. So if we have a look at a satellite image, we can't see much information here. There's very little information that we can actually gather out of this image. We can also see there's a seam here. This is where two satellite images from two different dates are actually overlapping. So this information here on the left is actually older than this information here on the right. But this tile is massive, so this is a very big tile that it could stretch for hundreds of meters long. And each of these pixels are very, very large. As you can see, you can't see much detail. But if you have a look at it through a drone of the exact same area, you can really see a lot of information. You can see the bolts on the railway track here. You can see everything. And if we overlay our scale pixels back in, that is 1 meter by 1 meter, and because the pixels are only 2 centimeters, you obviously can't see it. That's how high the resolution of these maps and models are. So that's what it looks like. It's a structure from motion. So you've got one image covering this side of the tree, then another one from a little bit more overhead, then one from the other side, then one from the other side. Those pixels are all combined, and then you can start developing really high resolution 3D information, such as this. So here we've got a stand of alien vegetation, and it's a 3D point cloud. The total area is about 16 or 1.6 hectares, and it's the canopy volume is around 67,000 cubic meters. So it's quite a big dense stand. And then here you can also see these are the heights of the trees, so up to about 15 meters in some areas. So we can also use machine learning algorithms or AI to find the alien vegetation within these maps and models. So we have a really good detection, and then we also have the heights and area information behind that as well. So what can we do with this? We can start to actually plan. That's the whole reason, of course. So we can now establish that there's about 1,000 square meters of alien vegetation there, and it's around 61 to 70 meters away from the road, the center line of the road. Here we've got a pine, and here we've got black wattle. So this is a cluster, that's an individual, and so on and so forth. So we can actually gather quite a large amount of information from this and put it into data tables. So we've got Acacia manzii. It's got 0 area because this particular study was looking for this equates to clustering, whereas with the individual was just marked as 0. Distance from the road, what's the ease of access in terms of the terrain and also in terms of the distance to the nearest ease of access point. So as you can see, most of these are quite difficult to actually get to. And then the GPS coordinates for each of those plants and clusters are also recorded as well. So if you're looking at a very dense area of black wattle like this, it's only 41 meters away from this house. These fires are extremely intense, burning over 1,000 degrees Celsius. So the chances of that house burning down are almost 100%. We can also see in here there's a lot of other alien vegetation as well. Same with this house. That house is absolutely toast. So we can also consolidate our aerial data with ground data, so by using customizable app technologies as well. We can then go and ground truth the information. So surveyors can have their own names put in. They can then record. The app can be set up in a custom way. So what are you looking for? We're looking for aliens. We want to be able to fill in the information in the field as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. And once we've got that, we can consolidate that with our drone data and make sure that we've got very accurate information recorded. So here we're looking at actually being able to take photographs of the aliens as well, which we can then bank for later surveying. We can do some editing of the videos or images as well, and then that can be saved out, and timestamps are automatically targeted. The dot becomes red because it is alien vegetation. Green vegetation will come up in green, and that's overlaid to our high resolution drone imagery. So we've got all of our ground data recorded, all of our aerial map data recorded, and then we've got our baseline, and we can plan from that. So when it comes to clearing methodology, we've got the traditional methods of doing it by hand. So whether that's by chainsaw and cut stump, or Foley spraying, or pulling it out of the ground manually. There's different methodologies that are being used at the moment, and to various levels of effect. So if we have a look at a manual clearing operation that was done by Arne Witt back in 2021, we can see that this entire area here is covered in black wattle, and these are very tall black wattles and blackwoods. They were then ring barked by Arne Witt, and this is what it looks now. Absolutely fantastic recovery of the natural vegetation, and you can see the skeletons of those aliens lying in the bush. A lot of this was also removed for firewood by the local community as well, so everyone wins. The fire intensity of this area has gone down substantially, obviously, because of that as well. Another approach would be to use drone technology in denser stands of wattle or blackwoods, blue gums, things like that. Plants that can grow quite close together and form these very dense stands, especially the black wattle. Agricultural spray drones can be very effective for actually managing these. And the reason being is because you can get quite precise with an agricultural drone. You can set up buffers on either side of the spray site so that you minimize your collateral damage. They fly very low to the tree lines, so the chances of drift are a lot less should there be a little bit of wind. And also by combining the aerial photography or photogrammetry data with the spray drones, you can get very good insight into what the changes are before and after a spray site. So this is an area of young black wattle seedlings that are coming up. They were quantified using the photogrammetry process. It was then sprayed and then quantified again. So the areas in purple were before the spray and the areas in green were after the spray. So we can see a good reduction. You can see the flight patterns of the drone as well while it was spraying. And we can see that around 930 square meters were killed off, and then later on the rest of it all died off as well. So the kill rate on this one was very good. And if you want to have a look at a local wilderness area, you can have a look at Constantia Kloof Quarry, where a drone was used to spray some standalone trees. So the current methods, if we can compare the two methods, the project in the Western Cape in 2023, an area of about 3 hectares was cleared using manpower, part of the EPWP program, and it took a very long time for various reasons. The weather's always a factor. People's availability to get to site, things like that, affected this program a little bit. But a 6-man team took about 3 months to clear a 3-hectare area, and their cost per hectare came to about 30,000 rand per hectare, depending on. That's inclusive of things like lodging and fuel and things like that. So quite an expensive operation there. We're using a drone. The same area can be sorted out with a 2-man team in about 5 hours at about 4,000 rand. These per hectare. Then these numbers are from 2023, so they do not represent the current numerics. It's also important to remember that each of these methods, whether it be manual or manned, on the ground or UAV, they both have their place in the alien vegetation clearing. Neither method is a silver bullet. So you need to always just keep that in mind. But certainly for very dense clusters of alien vegetation, where you've got 30 to 40 plants per square meter, a drone is certainly going to be able to spray off and kill off a lot of that vegetation a lot quicker. When it comes to deforestation, which we do see a lot of in wilderness nowadays, with the influx of people coming into the area, moving down here from up north and all over the country, obviously this has an effect on alien vegetation coming up as well. So we can monitor alien vegetation that's popping up from deforestation by using photogrammetry process once more. So high resolution map data. We can monitor how well clearing operations are being done, how carefully they're being done. This particular project was done very, very well. And the demarcated area for the housing footprint was cleared only, and there was very little over clearing, which is wonderful to see because it's quite rare that actually happens. So this team did a great job. And this is over a 3-day period to clear 672 square meters plus the driveway, which is 173 square meters. It took about 3 days to clear. We can then have a look at what the shred stock from that clearing looks like. Again, the scale bar on the right hand side is in meters, and we can now look at some of the numeric information here. So in 2021, before clearing, The volume was around 1002. There's about 1004. So we can compare those data sets from those two different years. And we can also look at the change in volume. So rough estimate of volume change, around 227 squares. So it gives us an idea of how the natural vegetation is growing as well. And what it worked out to be was around 4.3 tons worth of vegetation cleared for that housing development. So when we're looking at change detection modeling, we can see over a period of time that obviously the vegetation in this site is going to grow back because development hadn't started yet. So we want to monitor how much the alien vegetation is growing so we can compare the data set from just after clearing to the data set a couple of months afterwards, and we can monitor the growth of alien vegetation. So we can see the difference here, and we can see just how rapidly alien vegetation increases in terms of its size. That is black wattle growing there, and that is the scale bar in meters as well. So it's grown quite a lot over a very short period of time. So other uses for high resolution data in conservation management around this area. As I say, for overclearing monitoring, we can see the site here was overcleared by 134 squares. The site is still not recovered entirely, and that's now 4 years on from when it was cleared. But we can also look at things like disaster management. So a house was severely damaged during a good heavy rains that we had, and flooding took out the front end of the house. So for insurance purposes, this is quite an amazing use of the technology. We can quantify exactly how much material was removed from the house and how much was needed to restabilize the foundations afterwards as well. So the total material that was needed to stabilize this particular property was around 264 additional cubic meters. So it's quite a lot of material that was needed to come in. And if we have a look at the river system as well, we can start looking at some very interesting data here. Mark Dixon is doing river estuary monitoring, and I was able to take some of his data and actually quantify some interesting information, and then do some scans of my own as well. So it's quite amazing to be able to see what you can do with the 3D data. So if we look at the entrance to the Toes River, we can see that there's this is on a very standard day. And then a couple of hours later, the next day, after a big tide, huge amounts of sediment was washed into the estuary itself. Having the before and after data sets, we can then quantify it as well. We can see that in the regions around here, around 2.2 meters worth of material was deposited on the way in. In the brown area there, around 1.4, 1.5. And then there's also erosion taking place here in the green and in the yellow, also again in meters here, so 99, so about a meter around there, and then also being undercut there. Numerically speaking, that is around 6,795 African elephants worth of tonnage. The Eiffel Tower weighs 30,000 tons, so this weighs more than the Eiffel Tower. And this is sediment that was pushed in over a very short period of time, only a couple of hours. Just shows you how powerful nature actually is. And also the fact that we can use drone data to quantify it. If you look at it in Olympic pool sizes, this is to scale, then you can have a look at that sort of from a observable point of view as well. Also looking for high tide and flood information along the beach. We can quantify using AI the amount of debris that was washed up on the beach, and we can work out what that is in meters and hectares and percentage coverage. So about 8% of the beach was covered very solid debris after a big rain spout, and then followed by a big tide. And quite a lot of sediment was washed away from the beachhead over here as well, damaging a lot of properties along the Sands Road area. The volume removed in this particular area was about 17,000 cubes, so that's a lot. That's a lot of material. So around, if we're going to stick with our elephant analogy, around 5,500 tons of material was removed by that high tide. If you would like to find out more about the Save Wild program for wilderness, then go to the Save Wild website as well. If you would like to find out anything more about drones and GIS software and how to use these amazing tools, you can go to geowingacademy.com. Thank you very much.